been set up specifically for the MassCEC Triple-Decker Design Challenge, and we're both glad that you've enrolled in the challenge and are going to be using this calculator to look at the carbon footprint of the materials you've chosen for your project. Before you get too deep into this tutorial, I would highly recommend that you spend some time with the written instruction manual that comes along with this. It has a lot more information about the calculator, some of the limitations of the results you'll see, and step-by-step instructions in written form as well. But let's take a look at the calculator. It's pretty easy to use, so it shouldn't take too long for you to figure out what's going on here. So when you open up the spreadsheet, you should be on the main sheet. If you look down on the bottom left, we're on the main sheet tab. And there are two areas that you need to fill out here in this main sheet. The first being this project information section. So most of this is information that the MassCEC competition is going to use to identify your project and associate it with these results. The important part for this calculator in terms of its actual calculations is your total floor area here. So this is the total habitable floor area. You can check the competition rules to see how that's calculated, but it's important that this is entered and accurate, as this will give you your per square foot emissions values. Once you've filled in your project information, you're going to scroll down to section 2 here, which is the building dimension calculator. And this yellow field, these can be filled in with the specific information for your project. So for each area, window areas, roof area, etc., you can fill in the appropriate columns here for your project. I've just put 100 square feet for each of them in here, just as a placeholder so that we can see what that information looks like as we scroll through the tabs. So once you've completed the yellow areas on this main sheet, you can start to progress through the tabs. We will go to the roof tab as our next step. And once the roof tab opens up, you will see that there are separate sections for each element that might make up the roof. Here we have framing, sheathing, roofing, insulation, and each one is separate. You don't have to select any of these categories if it's not something that you're adding or changing in your design. So if there's areas here that don't relate to your project, then you simply don't check them. When you get to these tabs, you'll see that as soon as you've entered your square footage or your areas, the carbon content, the carbon footprint of the materials associated with that square footage are already here for you to view. And we did that specifically so you can sort of get a really quick comparison of what the different material carbon profiles look like as you scroll through. And that might help guide some of your choices when you see the sort of relative impacts of different materials. When you know what material you're going to choose, you simply click this checkbox. Here it's already been checked for TJIs, and you can see that when it's checked, the amount comes up here in red, and that gets translated back to the main sheet. So the running tally continues to add to the main sheet. And so you can see here I've checked 5/8 inch plywood for the roof sheathing. I've chose steel roofing. And very important, anywhere that insulation is being used, you need to input an R value. So here I've chosen R30, and so all of the associated carbon footprints for these insulations are based on R30. Should I change that to, say, 40, you'll see that the values change. Down at the bottom of the sheet, you have a subtotal for this portion of the building, and if we flip back to the main sheet, you'll see that that subtotal is reflected here, and it contributes to the grand total up in the top right. So you can work your way through the tabs. We'll go to exterior walls next. Exterior walls has a lot of different components to it, and again, you would only check the ones that are appropriate for your project. What I want to show you here is how the percentage buttons work. So say this building is going to have half brick siding and half vinyl siding. You can see here I've checked the brick and I've checked vinyl, and I've altered the percentages to show that it's 50-50, or if it was 60-40, I can make that change. The reason that I want to show you this is because the calculator doesn't ensure that your totals add up to 100. So I could have put 60-20, and the calculator is not going to flag to you that you've only clad 80% of your building. So it's up to you to make sure that if you're choosing multiple materials, that they do total up to 100. You can also use that feature if you're only changing the cladding on 40% of the building. You could make that adjustment here too. So the rest of the tabs are very similar to these. So you'd work your way through all the tabs. I'm going to take you to the Additions tab as the final one we'll look at. It's a little bit different because you're starting the building. You're basically making a new building from scratch. So here in the Additions tab, you would input all the dimensions for the addition separately here. So obviously if you don't have an addition, then you can ignore this section. But if you are building a new addition, then you would input all the dimensions just like you did on the main sheet. And as you scroll down, you'll see that each element that you might put into the addition, from footings right through till finishes, are all included here. So same process. You check off the material, you check off the percentage, and when you get that all completed, the full value will have showed up here as a subtotal and will be back on the main sheet as well. When you're all finished, you can check your grand total and see what your carbon footprint is going to be. And we had these show up here, these subtotals show up here, because if you're not happy with that total, if you'd like to try to bring your total carbon footprint down, this area is a good place to see, where the hot spots are, where your really big numbers are, and then you can revisit that tab. You can iterate through this calculator as many times as you want or need to, so you can really sort of play with it to kind of refine your carbon footprint to a place where you're happy with it. And just before we wrap up, I just want you to note that this is a one-time version of this calculator. It's specifically created for this triple-decker competition. So the data in it is not going to be updated. This version of the calculator isn't going to be supported. So this is really intended for this competition only. If you're interested in working with this calculator for other reasons, you can contact Builders for Climate Action and get an updated version of the calculator that's meant more for general construction. We're really glad that you've entered the MassCEC competition. We're really glad that this calculator is being used, and we look forward to any feedback or comments you may have on the calculator. Enjoy the competition, and may the best triple-decker win.